Today could be one of the most legendary moments in all of college football. That dramatic statement is courtesy of national championship winning head coach Kirby Smart. So what exactly is happening? We'll tell you. And look alive, fans of these very programs. If you see your team's logo, you are in it for a top 5 tight end in the 2026 class. Where will Brock Harris pick? He joins us live to make his decision. Plus, we have intel ahead of the 3 biggest spring games this Saturday. Newcomers to watch and quarterback battles to track. All that and more as the ultimate college football show starts right now. You are looking live into Pine View High School in Utah. That is where the number 5 tight end in the 2026 class is set to make his decision later on in the show. We got BYU, Georgia, Miami, Michigan, Oregon, and Utah. All the hats are here. Those are his finalists. Find out very soon where Brock Harris is headed. Welcome into the ultimate college football show. He's Smoke Dixon. I am Emily Proud. We love the days when we have live commitments, but Smoke, we got so many other things to get to on this show. What are you looking forward to?
Spring game previews. Don't get any better than this. It's springtime, spring ball, kind of early, but let's get to it.
We spent so much time on this show talking about how spring games are dead and they're going away. No, there's still plenty of spring game action. We'll talk about that. But let's start, as we always do, with the opening kick. We've got some transfer portal news ahead of the spring window opening next week. Former Mizzou quarterback Drew Pine is transferring to Bowling Green. He started his career at Notre Dame, played 3 years there before transferring to Arizona State for a season, and then he was at Missouri last fall. I hope you're keeping notes here. He has 2 years, though, somehow, of eligibility remaining. But I want to ask you about Eddie George. It's his first big portal win. What does it mean?
Well, we're looking into the age of getting a veteran backup quarterback. And we know we need that on the roster. And Eddie being an NFL guy, he understands that at some point, in some way, somehow, you always have to have someone with that veteran presence. Like you said, he's been all over, East Coast, West Coast, all over the place. But the thing is, he understands how to play the game. And he's okay with being a good backup. What
does something like this do in order to propel what Eddie George wants to build at Bowling Green? We always talk about in recruiting, you get that quarterback, that's that first domino, and potentially you bring in more. How is this maybe a springboard for what's to come?
It's really comfortability. How comfortable are you with your starter? You're good with your starter, but it's the unknown. Yeah. What happens if? And you want to know if this does happen. I have a veteran that's been there. He's a graduate. Even though he has 2 years left, he's played a lot of football, and we can run our offense and function behind him instead of going to a young guy that you're just rolling in the dice. And I don't think Eddie wants to go in his first year rolling in the dice. He wants to go with a guy that he knows, that understands the game of football.
Yeah, just makes you feel so much better when you have another veteran in that room.
Go to sleep better at night.
Yeah,
and you come to practice
exactly.
And you can run your entire offense. You don't have to have a package for a guy that might not understand, and the game is still speeding up. For him, if the game hasn't slowed down yet, good luck.
I don't know if it ever will.
No.
All right, well, we are looking forward to a live commitment on today's show, but if you were paying attention to what happened over the weekend, well, with help from Snoop Dogg and Juju Watkins, top 5 running back Deshaun Rideau said that he is staying home. You watched him pick USC live right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. The California native adds to the Trojans' dominant number 1 class. You heard me correct. USC, the number 1 class in 2026. I know it's early, but what early statement is Lincoln Riley and his staff making right now?
That we got California on lock. And when you are recruiting at a high level like that, and you go out and you hire the GM, Chad Bowden, you're making a statement. Everybody in the recruiting world once heard that Lincoln Riley does not want to recruit California. Shame on us. This 2026 class, he's knocking it out the park. And also you understand that he's going out and he's targeting national potential athletes that can come out and ball in California. So when you win home and then you go out nationally and the ones that you're targeting land, yeah, you're doing something in recruiting and you're having a lot of attention looking at you from all the other GMs, head coaches, and said, man, we think we can go into Cali and do what we wanted to do. Yeah, they put a fence around it and we can't get in.
Yes, and there's tons of talent right in their backyard. So taking advantage of that was a necessity.
Always been. It's just now you have somebody with the structure of going in and saying, this is how we're going to do it. And again, when you have continuity on the coaching staff, defensive staff, you've always had the continuity on the offensive staff. You're just now building and beginning that relationship and letting your people in your state know that we're here to stay and we mean business.
Big off season for the Trojans right now. But if you want to learn more about Deshaun Rideau and what he adds to this USC team, we've got some more content right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Busy week for live commitments. We told you at the top of the show, we have another one coming later on in this program. A top 70 player in this class will join us to make his college choice. That's tight end Brock Harris. We'll pick between, again, BYU, Georgia, Miami, Michigan, Oregon, and Utah. So many offers, so many options for him. What will one of these lucky schools get?
They're going to get a competitive guy that can block in line, athletic enough to block in space. But what separates him is the ability to play in traffic. And when you look at tight ends, you say, how can you command the middle of the field, win the middle of the field? And when we give you opportunities down the middle of the field and vertically, go up, contest, win 50-50 balls. But he has such strong hands going across the middle. He's a demon in the red zone as well, too. Big athletic guy. You need a lot of those guys around in order to win.
Find out in minutes where tight end Brock Harris is headed. We are rocking and rolling here on the Ultimate College Football Show. A reminder to hit that like button. We like when you do that, so go ahead. It looks like a thumbs up button there. Also, submit some questions. We love to answer your ultimate burning questions. You can drop them in the YouTube chat right now, maybe over on X, over on Instagram. We will take your questions. Also, we are on the road to 1 billion, that is billion with a B, views right here on the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being a part of that. If you can hear the sound of my voice, then you are a part of that 1 billion views. We are almost there, so make sure you go and tell your friends. It is a big day for a College Football Confidential with John Talty. It's the final approval hearing for the House versus the NCAA settlement. Guys, this is the biggie. It'll allow schools to start paying athletes starting July 1st. The judge currently hearing from objecting parties, but no ruling is expected today. Kirby Smart summed up the importance of today during a press conference last week.
Could be one of the most legendary, moments in all of college sports with what's coming up on this ruling and how people are going to try to manipulate a cap when all we're trying to do is make for competitive balance.
Let's welcome in national college football writer John Talty to the discussion. Kirby Smart calling today legendary. What's the significance of what's happening right now in a California courtroom?
Yeah, I think we've been talking about it for so long that I think sometimes we do forget just how much of a landmark moment this is going to be in which schools can directly pay their athletes. This is something that people have been fighting for many years that people have said would never happen. We've had ADs and coaches who have threatened to retire if there ever was a day that players were paid directly. Well, that day is coming very, very soon. As you mentioned on the start, Judge Wilkin is not expected to make a decision today. It was great news for us, probably bad news for TV producers, and that she said right off the jump, there'll be no decision today. Didn't really allow the tension to build, but we expect it probably within this week, in which people expect her to approve that settlement, which will allow schools to, again, directly pay. And then to Kirby Smart's point, how different schools handle that, how they try to manipulate it, how they divvy up their money. It's going to be really fascinating. And those discussions have already, of course, been happening. And there are already some internal battles brewing on campuses between football coaches, basketball coaches. Everybody wants more, and there's only so much to go around.
Yeah, even if we don't have an official ruling today, this should not have caught anybody by surprise. So what are schools doing right now to prepare for what's to come?
Yeah, I think kind of going off what I said, I think a lot of it's where is this money going to, right? And I think, the generally expected formula, which is based off of a lot of the House settlement back damages, is that about 75% of that $20.5 million will go to football, about 15% will go to men's basketball, about 5% will go to women's basketball, and then you've got 5% kind of in this other bucket, which would go to baseball, softball, wrestling, lacrosse. Depends on kind of your individual campus. So, Oh, athletic departments have been working on that for a while, figuring out exactly what that formula looks like. It has evolved as time goes on. People are realizing, especially in, say, men's basketball, you might need a little bit more than 15% if you're going to compete at the highest level. Already some people frustrated about how much money the Big East can devote because they just care about basketball and not having to pay that 75% of football. So that's part of it. And then I think it's just getting guys under contract, figuring out how exactly this money's going to roll out, making sure you have kind of all your ducks in a row, that once this is approved and we officially go kind of into this new world, that you are ready for it and that there are not issues where guys aren't getting paid on time or that the money that was promised is not what's actually showing up in their bank account. There's a lot of potential issues that can come just from a kind of granular level. That's all kind of part of the preparation for this moment.
Because a big part of this is, I think we can say as a college football collective and college sports in general, we're over the whole fact that athletes are now getting paid. Hopefully, for the most part, we have moved past that. We know it's a reality of what's happening. What people want to see, though, John, is some sort of regulation and some sort of calming of what we like to call the wild, wild west of what's happening. So how is everything that's happening in the courtroom today and coming through with this House settlement, where will we see some regulation come out of this?
Well, what's funny is that people are asking for regulation, but also making plans to try to get around that regulation, right? And that's, I think, just part of what is college sports, where everyone wants it to be kind of an even playing field. And yet you have these collectives and other people involved that are going to try to do everything they can to allow their school to have an edge over the others. So I think where the difference of what this new era looks like compared to what we're coming out of, I think is the key part of it is this third party, which is backed by Deloitte, in which they're going to review NIL deals that are more than $600. And so whereas right now you can pay whatever you want to pay, right? You can pay a quarterback $3 million if you want, and that person's actual NIL value might be 1/8 of that, but that's what the market dictates, and so that's what people are paying. Moving forward, if you're giving someone a $3 million NIL deal, that's going to be reviewed by this third party. And I think where there's so much interest is just figuring out how strict are they going to be? Are they going to reject deals? And I think right now you're seeing lawyers basically already preparing lawsuits to some extent for when that first rejection happens to, try to sue to see whether this kind of third party uphold will be upheld, or if we go back to kind of the Wild West that people have described this most recent era. So we know kind of what's coming, but we don't know in practicality how it's going to work, how strict it's going to be. And again, the first time that, there might be a $250,000 deal for a player and they reject it, how does the school react to that? What do they do? All of that stuff, I think, is still part of the unknown, but we know it's going to lead to some challenges and questions.
Yeah. The first question being, how do you determine somebody's market value? Shouldn't that just be what you are willing to pay them? That will certainly be up for interpretation, as is a lot of this. And I thought something interesting that Judge Wilkins said today was, who are we to say essentially to move this cap from 0 to 20.5 million, whatever it ends up being? Ultimately, we're still putting a cap on it. So there could be some collective bargaining that could be down the block. Overall, there's just so many future questions. What's the biggest question that you have going forward in all of this?
Yeah, and the judge brought up that this probably would be easier if there was collective bargaining. And I think that's the thing that continues, I think, to hang over college sports. There are people who are involved right now in trying to ultimately get it to a place where it's collectively bargained. I think that, of course, the people on that side of things believe it would solve a lot of problems. And I think that there's real reason to believe that it could help some of these challenges, whether that's a player union or some other kind of form. But, I think that would allow some of the things that frustrate coaches so much right now, where guys are coming and going at any moment. Well, if you're collectively bargaining and you're getting these guys under and women under binding contracts, then you're not going to have the coming and going the way we see. I thought there was a recently good point made. I think it was the Grambling State coach who said, if a guy's leaving, to a bigger school, they should have to buy out his contract so that at least the smaller school is compensated for developing this player and losing him to a bigger school. I think that's a great solution, but that probably needs to be collectively bargained in order for that to happen. So that's going to be one of the big, I think, next steps of this, is just figuring out how we kind of get our arms around all of that so that we're not still in this period where guys can transfer in December and transfer again in April. That's not fun for anybody. And I think that's what coaches really get frustrated over right now.
Yes, and fans as well, who we should not forget in all of this. John Talty, thank you so much for helping us make sense of all the legalese that's happening in the sport that we love to just watch on Saturdays, but have to pay attention to the things that are happening here in April. And if you are wondering, how did we get here? Well, thankfully, John Talty and Armin Katayan wrote the book on it. So check out The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. You can find it wherever you get books these days. So I have the pleasure of talking to John Talty and then just seeing smoke out of the corner of my eye going like this, or that's not going to work. What stands out to you about what you just heard?
Man, I should have gone to law school to listen to all that. But the number one thing that jumped out to me is who's placing the value on the players.
Your guess is as good as mine.
And if it's a third party that's doing that, how does the third party understand that player's value to your team? I think if you just give the cap value and say, this is what it is for this school, let me spend my money the way that I want to. Because if every single contract is going to be reviewed, we're going to be here for a long time. And most schools can't wait because things happen right now, especially with coaches. Coaches are impatient. They'll throw that patient word out all the time, but they want things now. They want to understand how much, when can I pay, and who am I going to pay that to, and when can I get them into the building? They want for that person to start learning my offense or defense or the playbook.
Every contract over $600, which we assume is going to be every single one for the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah, you mentioned the frustration among coaches. I mean, they've had to wait for these eligibility cases to go through as well, and you have to imagine that there's going to be even more of what we see in the new rev share era. I want to get your perspective, though, real quick on this, because you worked kind of on both sides of things with college football and with the NFL, and when I hear collective bargaining, I think of the NFLPA and everything that they have gone through with their contracts with the league. What are the differences and maybe what makes it more challenging to collectively bargain in college football versus the NFL?
32 teams in the NFL, and you've been established longer. And at some point, the NFL understands their value. In college right now, there's no value. And there's different levels of it. You have FCS and FBS programs. You have programs that can go out and get $1 billion. And you have some that are just scrapping for maybe $50,000 in order to have in their collective to pay. But in the NFL, what you have is everyone has an even pie. We all start out at the same amount of number for our salary cap. In college, there's no cap for right now because each school determining what you have, how much can you spend, an AD with that pile of money can say, you know what, basketball is getting 50% of this, which is close to $10 million. And another school will say, well, football is getting 80%. So now I can spend as much as I want to on different sports, and it's still not equaling an equal playing field for each team.
And players aren't around as long as they are in the NFL. Unless you're Drew Pine, you're usually only there for about 4 years. So it makes it harder to collectively bargain when players are moving in and out. But
6th and 7th year players, I kept on hearing it, and I don't think that's realistic.
So we'll see. Well, in the midst of all of this chaos, spring practices are still rocking and rolling everywhere, all across the country, as they get ready for some spring games, which, yes, those do still exist. And some of the top programs will be kicking off this Saturday. Our team site reporters are standing by to give us a newcomer to watch when these games kick. So let's start at the top there with Georgia. Jordan Hill is joining us from Dogs 24/7.
Well, when you talk about spring practice, the number one question on everybody's mind is which freshmen are standing out. And it's safe to say Elijah Griffin, the former five-star defensive tackle, is doing that in Athens. He's a guy that a lot of people were excited about with his potential coming in to his first spring at Georgia. And to this point, he's really impressed. He's a guy that we've heard about really coming out of both of Georgia's scrimmages before G-Day this Saturday. And he's a guy that not only do you like his talent, his potential, but you consider the position he's at. This is a defensive line that has lost several guys to the NFL, especially at his position, Isaiah Stackhouse, Warren Brinson, guys who are hoping to hear their names called in the NFL. Elijah Griffin has lived up to it so far. We'll see how he goes through the rest of this offseason, but so far so good for the former five-star.
Let's welcome in National College Football analyst Brandon Marcello to join the spring conversation. I'll start with you here. You heard Jordan say it. They need a defensive lineman there at Georgia, and they need Elijah Griffin to make an impact. So what can we expect from him this fall?
Well, listen, Georgia has never been short on amazing, impactful defensive linemen, edge rushers, linebackers for that matter. And we see freshmen come in and step in and be able to get some of those snaps. So I don't doubt at all that he's going to be able to come in and provide an immediate spark there. That defensive line was a bit inconsistent last year. You suspect that Kirby Smart's going to be working on that quite a bit this offseason. I think it's going to be a little bit more of an explosive, much more consistent defensive line.
Yeah, I'm never, ever going to be worried about Georgia and defense. With Glenn Shubin and Kirby Smart over there, they're going to have a good defensive plan all the time. And they're never going to be short of defensive linemen. That's just what they do. When they erase one or move one on in the NFL and first, second, third, or even 5 of those guys leaving, it always seems like there's about 4 more there, and they all look the same, and that young guy is always better. So defensive line, man, listen, that's Georgia, and that's what they do.
Yes. You say that you're never concerned about what's happening in the defensive line at Georgia. What does concern you? What are you paying attention to this Saturday?
Well, I'm always going to tell you that Georgia's biggest issue is always offensive players, receivers. How are they using Zachariah Branch? I'm interested to see. Are they just using him as a gadget player, or is he going to be a receiver that lines up at the Z position, lines up in the slot position, and run realistic receiver routes? And is Mike Bobo going to get him the ball in space for him to operate as a true number 1 receiver in the SEC?
Listen, for me, Georgia loses 4 starters along that offensive line. An offensive line that was the second to worst in run blocking last year with that rushing attack. That worries me. But they should be better this season. They've got some guys coming back that have some experience like Ernest Green, but they need to step up. These are guys that have had handfuls of starts, 3 to 4 players that are probably going to be thrust into starting spots. Now, everybody's going to be wondering about the receivers. As you mentioned, they've upgraded there. I don't think there's any doubt on paper they've upgraded. They should be better at receiver. At quarterback, I'm not worried about Gunnar Stockton. He's a gamer. We saw him in 2 games late last season. I thought he's performed very well. He's going to do fine there. But the key to Georgia's success this fall is going to be that offensive line. They were terrible in run blocking last year, and that's why Georgia was unable to get deep into the college football playoff.
Well, speaking of a team who did get pretty deep all the way to the national championship, Ohio State. Those reigning champs have a lot of questions, though, to answer and holes to fill after reaching the mountaintop in January between staff changes, a new quarterback, multiple players off to the Sunday sport. The Buckeyes are going to lean heavily on newcomers. Dave Biddle gives us one to watch.
A true freshman that is certainly standing out for Ohio State is Devin Sanchez. Not a huge surprise. He was ranked as the number 1 corner in the country, according to 24/7 Sports in the 2025 class, the number 5 overall player in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. And he has definitely lived up to the billing. He carries himself like, even looks like an NFL player right now. Not that he could play in the NFL right now, but he just has that body type at 6'2", 190. And we're talking about a young man that should still be in high school right now, getting ready for his high school prom, but plays, very physical, obviously a very big corner, fast, athletic. He also carries himself. When you talk to him, he carries himself like a veteran. So Buckeye fans should get excited about Devin Sanchez. He's not going to start as a true freshman, but he's going to be on the 2 deep for sure. If they do have injuries, then he could put himself, in line to start. But right now, he's going to be running with the 2s, along with another former 5-star corner, Aaron Scott. He's entering his sophomore year. But Devin Sanchez, a very impressive freshman class they've brought in. There at least 5 guys are going to play as true freshmen on Ohio State's defense, all as backups. And I think Devin Sanchez will get the most playing time out of any of those freshmen. He's coming ready to go, and he's going to add valuable depth to Ohio State secondary.
Yeah, this Ohio State 2025 class coming in is riddled with 5 stars, specifically in that secondary. You heard Dave say, though, Smoke, that they don't expect Devin Sanchez necessarily to start, but what kind of impact can he still make even when he comes on the field whenever?
Listen, ball skills, coverage ability, he's going to get on the field often and early. I mean, his skill set is one of the better ones that I saw when I was evaluating coming out of high school. So I think he's going to get on the field fairly early, and they're going to build packages for him, especially in the nickel and the dime position.
That defense was amazing last year, but they only returned 3 starters, and that defensive backfield is going to be a spot where you can see a lot of rotation with a lot of these youngsters. There's probably in the depth chart, that 2 deep, you're probably going to see 4, maybe 5 newcomers in that 2 deep as far as freshmen out of that class. That is something to watch this spring if I'm an Iowa State fan watching that game Saturday. What's that rotation look like, and are they up to speed and ready to go?
For all the publicity those Ohio State wide receivers get, man, it sounds like they are being challenged in practice right now. But when they hit the field for their spring game this weekend, Brandon, what are you going to be paying attention to?
Well, for me, Ohio State won the national championship last year because of their depth. I don't think enough has been talked about what they did along that offensive line last season when they lost 2 stellar offensive linemen at different points in the season, including right in the playoffs, and they were able just to go next man up. Can they do that this year? They don't have a lot of returning starters along that offensive line, but they've got a lot of guys that have experience, guys that had to level up on that depth chart last season because of injuries. They also have a couple of transfers coming in that are really going to give them some more depth. But that left and right tackle spot, as you saw on the screen right there, 2 guys, 2 transfers they're probably going to lean on to be either starters or big-time contributors. Ohio State won the national championship last year because they had depth along the offensive line, and they didn't miss much of a beat there when they had injuries. Is that the case again this year?
Yeah, even with that offensive line looking really good, we understood why Ohio State won the national championship. Quarterback play. And they kept the ball in the quarterback hands a good majority of the time. When they got in trouble, what did they do? Will Howard, ball in your hand, make the right decisions, if that's for the throw or running the ball in the red zone to score touchdowns. But what I'm looking forward to is how is Ohio State going to play offense this year? Are they going to run the offense that Chip Kelly left with a new offensive coordinator, Brian Hartline? Are they going to go back to the old system with Ryan Day, where there's more of a pro-style system? Now, when you see what offense they run, during the spring game is going to tell me who's going to be the starting quarterback. Julian Sand is more of a pro-style quarterback. Lincoln Kienholz is an athletic guy that wants to do it in the dual-threat world of RPOs and running the ball in his hands.
So might be a question mark on who the Buckeyes quarterback will be next season, but no question mark down in Knoxville as to who the quarterback will be for the Tennessee Volunteers. We're pretty sure about that, but there are certainly questions everywhere else because they were pretty quiet in the winter portal, but they did celebrate a number 11 ranked 2025 class on National Signing Day, and 23 of the 25 players enrolled early. They've been going through spring ball, and our Patrick Brown from GoVols 24/7 updates us on how the lone 5-star in the class is doing.
At Tennessee, all eyes have been on David Sanders Jr. this spring, and the 5-star freshman offensive tackle hasn't disappointed. After measuring himself against the likes of James Pierce Jr. and Joshua Josephs during college football playoff practices back in December, Sanders hit the ground running after enrolling in January and made the most of winter workouts, putting 20 pounds on his impressive 6'6" frame. He got up to 290 pounds for the start of spring ball, with 300 to 305 the target range for the season. On the field, Sanders has worked almost exclusively at right tackle. Now, left tackle was his primary position in high school, and that's probably going to be his long-term spot at Tennessee as well. But for now, that's where the Vols have Lance Hurd, the lone returning starter for a new-look offensive line. Sanders has impressed teammates and flashed what offensive line coach Clint Ellerby described as freaky talent, and he's played faster and more free as he's gotten more and more comfortable in the offense with the reps that he's gotten this spring. He hasn't staked a claim to a starting spot just yet, with Larry Johnson III getting most of the first-team reps there at right tackle this spring. But should Sanders continue on his current trajectory, it's likely a matter of when and not if that he's atop the depth chart for the Vols.
So Patrick's saying that David Sanders Jr. has been working exclusively at right tackle, but that might not be where he ends up in the future for his career. But how about this fall, Brandon? Where do we expect to see him?
Yeah, I think David Sanders will stay there at right tackle. They'll give him some opportunities there. I think he could potentially start. In fact, I think my expectation is he's going to push his way into that starting lineup when August and preseason camp comes around. He's done a fantastic job in this offseason. The thing, though, is that Larry Johnson III, he's got 3 years of experience, but I think this is a perfect year for him. He can go in, whether he's the starter or backup at right tackle, but continue to develop so that he can move over to left tackle, the money-making position along that offensive line here in year 2, maybe even year 3. So I love that move for David Sanders, and I think he's going to fit very well at right tackle.
Yeah, David being such an athletically gifted offensive lineman, left tackle, right tackle, guard, whatever position that you put him at, you had value to him because what he is, he's a physical player in the run game, the pass game, and it all comes to him so easily. Now that my biggest question on him was his ability to play with strength and adding on 20 such pounds in that weight room, and he looks physically different. You're getting a dominant player. I just hope that they just don't rush him into play right now, and he's not ready. But right tackle, ooze your way in, seeing left tackle for a couple of years, and he'll be doing some type of chest bump with the commissioner in the NFL draft. Talented guy.
Certainly. I love a good right tackle spring battle as much as the next person. But, Smoke, when the orange and white game kicks off this Saturday, what do you have your eyes on?
I want to see the defensive line. Do they have the same depth that they had last year where they rolled 8, 9 guys through? And when you watch them throughout the season, they got stronger. Their defense carried them. We all thought that Vol Nation was going to be an offensive prowess, scoring 40, 30-something points. No, they played dominant defense. And when they got into later on in the season, you saw that defense show up and give them the opportunity to go up there. Yes, they got their faces kicked in, Emily, on the road. But the only reason why they had that chance to go up there is because they had the depth on their defensive line to play longer in the season, run the ball, stop the ball from being run, and play good defense. And that's what I want to see.
I've got concerns with Tennessee's offensive line. They lose 4 or 5 starters, including 2 All-SEC type of players there along that starting offensive line. And Nico Iamaleava is going to go as far as that offensive line can carry them. Obviously, Tennessee was much more potent, I thought, as a running team, especially some tight games on the road. Can they keep doing that? Obviously, changing things at running back and then having to break in a new offensive line. Again, depth is going to be the big thing here in developing guys, bringing them up. Also, Arizona transfer Wendell Moe, left guard, played a lot of ball at Arizona, played in an up-tempo system. He struggled a little bit last year. They changed the offense a little bit there at Arizona, but now he's going back into a system that he's more familiar with. I think Wendell Moe at left guard is someone to really watch here this offseason and then going into the year as maybe someone that could blossom into that all-SEC type player. He's in a familiar scheme.
I love it. Our guys say pay attention to the big guys come Saturday. Brandon Marcello, thank you for joining us for these spring previews. You can check out more of his work at cbssports.com and on 247sports.com. That is where you will find extensive recruiting rankings, wall-to-wall team coverage, and transfer portal updates. The portal opens next week, people. Get ready. Also, check out the work from these great team sites you heard from. They'll get you ready to go for Saturday and bring you all the reaction and the info that we learn coming out of it. We got to show you one more time a live look into Pineview High School in Utah. That is Brock Harris and his family. The young man is getting set to make his college decision. The hats are ready. If we look at hat science here, man, they all look pretty crisp, Smoke. So we'll see where he is headed here in about 10 minutes. But first, let's hit some burning questions. You sent them in. I get to ask them, and Smoke gets to answer them. Let's start with this one on X from @TD_Bradley. Hello, friends. Who wins the Natty tonight? Talking basketball here to start off.
Basketball is my thing, Emily.
Okay.
I just stopped growing.
Okay.
I got
You
Florida.
can still watch, though.
Yeah, I got Florida winning.
Florida, okay.
Yeah, close game, but I think Florida's going to pull this out. Length, size, shooting, and guard play.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, Florida.
It's going to be fantastic. If it's anything like those the semifinals, man, we are in for a real treat tonight. I love it. How about for football? Who you got playing in the national championship, and who you have winning?
I got Penn State versus Texas,
Ooh.
and I think Steve Sarkisian brings it back to the SEC.
Wow. Okay.
I'm going to jump out there with that one.
Okay, there we go. You heard it here on April 7th. We got Penn State and Texas playing for the national championship with Texas winning. Got some more ultimate burning questions that you sent in via X, via Instagram. This one comes to us on X @TillmanTerp. When Smoke was a general manager, how did he prioritize positions when recruiting?
The best way that I can describe that is protect the one that has the keys to the franchise. That's your quarterback.
Yeah.
So I always prioritize quarterback play, offensive line play, defensive line play, DBs. So it always was who protected the quarterback, who can affect the quarterback, and who can affect the quarterback more on defense.
Okay, so now that all these general managers are hypothetically working with $20 million, how would you split up that money in your roster?
I would do it just like I had the salary cap set up at Maryland and use the NFL model. About 12.5% goes to your perceivable quarterback room. And then you divvy it up from your left tackle to your right tackle to your interior players. And then you go on the defensive side and say, okay, who are my rush ends that can get to the quarterback? Who are the guys in the middle that can affect the quarterback, pushing up the middle? Then I have to go pay the 3 cornerbacks that can make sure that the quarterback life is a miserable hell.
I love it. Everything just points back to the quarterback. When
He has the ball every single time. Yeah. All eyes on him. And if you can stop him and make his life tough, yeah, the game becomes that much simpler.
Most important position in football. All right, let's head to another ultimate burning question. Thank you again for sending them in. If you're thinking of one on the spot right now, by the way, you can go ahead and submit it on our YouTube chat. This one comes via @313Aggie. Which schools need the spring transfer portal the most this window?
I'm going to say those schools that were just barely in to the playoffs, and I would say Alabama.
Barely in or barely out?
Yeah, barely out. I'm sorry, barely out. And when I say that, I mean you have to execute positions of need. Mm-hmm. And when positions of need come up, we talked about it. You want to get those 6th, 7th, and 8th offensive linemen because you need them. You need to get that 5th, 6th, and 7th defensive line player that can come in and help you with that rotation so your guys aren't getting beat up for the long 16-game season that you potentially might have to play. And the way that you pay these guys now, say, that's where it truly comes into effect. Because the spring window, we don't know, like John Talty said, we don't know how much we're going to pay these guys, but we know we're going to have to pay these guys. So it's almost like a guesstimation of what you're going to have to give up in order to get these, we'll say, second window free agents, which can be the most beneficial and the most money ball type of guys. So I like the second window in comparable to the first one.
How much work can actually get done in this second window, do you anticipate?
A lot. Because what we have is you don't have the season. It's an off season. So all of the personnel people within those offices should have been combing through rosters. And now you can poach. Everyone wants to say you can't poach, but you can poach and go get the ones that you truly want. And now that you know that you have enough money to go out and spend, you can spend kind of wisely but wisely and cast that net and go get who you want to help that team win a national championship or get into the playoffs.
What kind of players do you expect to hit in the portal? Just doing a quick little preview because it opens up next Wednesday.
I'm always going to tell you that offensive linemen and defensive linemen are going to be the rush. And then you'll fall back into the cornerback play. But O-line, D-line is the one that you want to get established first because you have, now if you've gone through spring and you know what you look like depth-wise, you should already come out with your top 5 guys. But 5, you can't win with 5 anymore. You need, like I said, 6, 7 offensive linemen to go in, and even your 8th guy to be a swing left tackle or right tackle, like we talked about with David Sanders earlier. He can play right or left. But if you can get a veteran that can come in, be a good backup in case of anything happens, there you go.
So if you're looking for a starting quarterback,
yeah,
it's not the best place to find it.
If you're looking for a starting quarterback coming out of spring, I'm going to say you're probably only going to win 5 games. Because you should have already had that done coming into the spring.
Hey, look who we got here. Brock Harris is set to make his decision with us live. So let's go to St. George, Utah. That is where one of the top players in the 2026 class dominates the high school ranks, looking to bring that talent to the next level. So let's go ahead and welcome in the man himself. Brock Harris is joining us live. Brock, first and foremost, congratulations for arriving at this day. I want to hear just what it took to get to this moment where you're making your college decision.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Took a lot of time and effort talking with my parents, praying about it. But yeah, just a lot of time and effort into it. And unfortunately, I was just saying, got to choose one, but I'm excited.
It is definitely a tough decision, but nobody gets here alone. You mentioned your parents. I see you got a full crowd there. Who would you like to thank before you make your choice?
I already did this, but I'll thank them again. I thank my coaches, Jamar, Coach Shaw, offensive coordinator, Coach Boyer, my head coach, Coach Hosner, Coach B, everyone, my parents, especially my family, friends, teammates, and yeah.
Love it. All right. The moment has arrived. I know you said it's tough to pick just one, but you got to do it. Brock Harris, who do you select?
So, yeah. Okay. Big moment. After a long time considering, praying, talking, I'll be committing to Brigham Young University.
There you go. Breaking news. The number 5 tight end in the country, Brock Harris, is headed to BYU. Already has the jersey ready to go. Brock, there's a lot of people watching us here on YouTube now. Explain to us, why are you picking the Cougars?
I've just always felt super comfortable there. I mean, it wasn't an easy choice at all. But yeah, I just always felt a good feeling and kind of knew deep down in my heart it's where I belong for a while. I've been going to their camps since I was in like 8th grade. Just built a great bond with the staff. It's a family feeling for sure. So.
Yeah, and this is a huge decision for you, of course, but man, Cougars fans watching right now are so happy that you will suit up for their team one day. So what is your message to those fans?
I just want to thank them. They've been probably the most supportive on social media and stuff. But yeah, the Cougar Nation's definitely great. Thank them for everything and all the support.
I love it. Brock, thank you so much for being here and for allowing us to be a part of your big day. We got to see that jersey one more time before we say goodbye, but thank you again and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
There you have it. Brock Harris is headed to BYU. You saw all the finalists there on the desk. A tough decision for him, as he said, but man, what an exciting day for BYU fans and for the number 5 ranked tight end in the class. If you want to read more about this, check out our partners at Cougar Sports Insider. They will have all the coverage on the new tight end headed to Provo. Okay, so we talked a little bit about him at the beginning of the show, just who would end up landing this top tight end. So remind Cougars fans what they have to look forward to.
Big time get at the tight end position. You have a competitive inline blocker that's truly athletic to win on the outside. And like I said earlier, what he does in terms of winning across the middle of the field and being a competitive catcher in traffic, and then when you throw the 50-50 jump balls at him in the red zone, he goes up and make those catch happen. Now, his running after catch ability, amazing. Because you're looking at someone like a Dalton Kincaid. Even though he's playing, we're in the number 86, that's who comes to my mind when I see him play. An athletic guy that looks like a tight end but plays like a big wide receiver. And I want to tell everybody again, what I got across from his press conference was, I've been going to the BYU camp since the 8th grade. We know that it's coming down to a financial thing and it's transactional. No, it's still about recruiting, building relationships, because an 8th grader at some point is going to be a 12th grader, and they have to make that decision. So you have to still win with relationships in recruiting.
You can tell it means so much to him, so much to his family. He even said, too, he said BYU fans consistently were some of the kindest fans, most supportive, and now he gets to show off for them.
And continuity, like we talked about with USC. It's happening. The longer your staff stays together, the more people understand who you are and what the expectations is.
100%. Congratulations again to Brock Harris for making his college decision, and congrats to the Cougs fans watching right now, as you will get the number 5 tight end in the 2026 class. But that is not it for us here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel when it comes to commitments. We've got more. The number 14 overall player in 2026, Edge Rodney Dunham, will make his decision live with us right here on the channel. Mark your calendars for this Thursday at 4 Eastern. Also, mark your teams. We got Duke, South Carolina, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Tennessee are the finalists for Rodney Dunham. Thank you so much for watching today's show. We will see you back here on Wednesday and then once again Thursday for another live commitment. This has been the ultimate college football show.